So hello and welcome to Domi Tries This. I hope you brought your cuppa. Today's coffee mug is my sugar skull mug that I picked up for Christmas. I had picked up a set of 4 for my youngest daughter because she's into skulls. And they were so pretty, I had to have one for me. So there's that. Today's tea is a Sips by tea from last month, I believe. Might have been the month before. It is the Saffron Rooibos Herbal Tea Blend that has Rooibos, honeybush, lemon peel, ginger, saffron, and natural flavor in it. It's a very good tea. It's been sitting for a little bit, but it might need a little longer. Also, this is a slightly bigger mug than these are supposed to handle, so we'll see if it does a good job in here. Usually the Temple teas do very, very good, and they're very strong, but let's give it a shot and see what happens. Yes, it's a very light flavor. I think this Temple might have needed a smaller coffee mug, but that's okay. We'll let it sit while we go ahead and get started. It's a whole and healthy Wednesday, and we're going to finish our discussion on some of the popular diets. I'm not going to attempt to hit all the diets in the world out there right now. There are way too many. When I did a thing of popular diets, there were like at least a dozen of them. So I'm just doing the ones that I've heard people working on or popped up on Lose It or something like that. So we've gotten the most popular ones. As we all can know, low carb seems to be the thing right now. But anyway, we'll get into all that. But first, before we get into all that, it's time for our old and new. And for today, I'm going to play with my old Alamar palette, which has these pretty colors in it. It's looking kind of greenish, at least in what I'm seeing, but it has this beautiful blue in it. And then I'm going to also add in my new Alamar palette, which I'm going to kind of flip this way, which has a beautiful purple in it I'm thinking about using. But I'm going to play with those two, and to add a bit more blue and to play around a bit more with something else that I've not played much with. Played with it a little bit, but not much. I'm going to use my Sarah K Beauty. I think this was called the Blues, although there's quite a bit of green in there. But we're going to play with that palette as well. So we're doing mostly new today, and also in the new, I'm using the Cover FX face palette that I just recently opened in my BoxyCharm, so there's that. And I'm thinking about trying this one as a blush and seeing how that works out. The contour I've already learned I have to be very careful with. In fact, this whole palette is highly, highly pigmented. You have to be very careful when you're using it. So we're going to play with that a little bit today. My face is ready to go. My eyes are ready to go. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, I'll have to be looking at notes. We're doing 4 diets today. I have a lot of notes, but there's a reminder. I'm not an expert. I'm not a doctor. Most of these diets are restrictive in some way, and restrictive high diets can be very hard to sustain and can lead to more of the dieting roller coaster that is hard on our bodies and slows our metabolisms and not very good. A number of these diets, and these ones in particular, I don't actually think, a couple of them actually weren't created to address specific ideas, but a number of the diets we've talked about were started to address specific medical conditions that have nothing to do with weight and become a part of the diet culture and also money grabs. As with anything, any or all of these may work for you, but if you're bouncing on and off the diet of your choice, you're probably doing more damage than good and haven't found the diet that you can maintain for life. So with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to start on, as usual, I don't know what the heck I'm doing today. I got colors and I just don't know what I'm doing today. I don't have any idea. There's that beautiful yellow in this one, and this one has this gorgeous gold. I found the gold to be slightly problematic. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with under the brow. I'm going to mix La Costa, which is this one here, with Mambo, which is this one here, and try to get sort of a peachy yellow, because if you look at La Costa, she's kind of a champagne-y color. So let's see what we can do and play with that. Alrighty, so the first diet I want to discuss is called the Zone Diet. It aims for a specific percentage of carbs, protein, and fat. Carbs should release sugars slowly, so not quick sugar fixes. Like you wouldn't use a candy bar on this diet to fix a low sugar thing. Protein should be lean, and fat should be monounsaturated. It claims to reduce inflammation, which Sears, the creator of the diet, believed to be the reason behind weight gain, illness, and faster aging. This is a diet I'm not quite that familiar with, so I really will have to look at the notes on this. It is similar to the Mediterranean diet in some ways. That yellow took over fast. Just do a couple of dabs of champagne. So when I'm putting the yellow in now, the first time I didn't, but when I'm putting the yellow in now, I'm starting near the crease. So that's where the stronger saturation is, and moving up. So as I was saying, this diet is similar to the Mediterranean diet. It's just a bit more structured and a bit more restrictive. Eating the way they suggest will result in weight loss, if only because of the extreme calorie restriction in the way you eat. Because when it comes right down to it, and as I've said it before, weight loss is dependent on calories in versus calories out. And you have to burn more calories than what you take in to lose weight. So this is a highly restrictive diet. Can result in severe deprivation, because basically 1,200 calories, and I was trying to find, I know somewhere I have the notes on it, possibly on my Pinterest account, but I couldn't locate it. But basically restricting yourself to 1,200 calories is for someone who's really thin, like 125 pounds already, and who's in a coma, so they're not active. That kind of low calorie restriction is doesn't give your body the energy it needs just to function, much less to be active and doing things. So it is highly restrictive. It is dangerous in that regard, that it can do that, be that restrictive. But initially you will lose weight. There's no doubt about it. You restrict your calories that much, you're going to lose weight, because that's the way weight loss works. You restrict calories and try to be active, you're going to lose weight. The diet is actually somewhat on the complicated side, or at least it looks like almost like a complicated counting diet, because you try to aim to be in the zone and in particular ratios for your carbs, your protein, and so on. And while it doesn't outright restrict foods, it does highly recommend against certain options, which again, if you're someone if you're prone to some sort of eating disorder or anything of that nature, it can be difficult for you. So I'm going to go ahead and take this purple Rumbera, and I'm going to put it across my lid. Now, the diet claims to increase performance, athletic performance and energy, but there is absolutely no evidence that it does that. And in fact, most of the evidence at this point shows an opposite effect of that. So you'll be tireder, your performance will go down. For example, the speed of your run, if you run every day, the speed will decrease. Things like that. There's been no evidence to show that this diet does anything that it claims other than helping you lose weight initially, and that's because of the high calorie restriction if you're following the diet specifically. And obviously there are risks of, like I said, of just not fueling your body enough and causing other issues later along as your body starts to struggle against basically starvation. And there is no evidence supporting the actual percentages of the diet. There's nothing that suggests that those specific percentages, that specific percentage of fat or that specific percentage of carbs actually helps with anything or does anything. Yeah, so the zone diet, I think from the sounds of it, like I said, it's not something that I'm highly familiar with, but since it's similar to the Mediterranean diet, which we know is a very healthy diet, I think if you paid attention to the calories, because like I said, it's apparently highly restrictive in terms of calories and amounts. If you paid attention to how much of that food and you made sure that you got the minimums that the FDA recommended, it's possible it could work. But again, you're looking at a diet that's trying to restrict certain foods, certain food groups, and if those foods are something that you enjoy, it's going to be a diet that you're not going to be able to stick to very well. So we're going to go with this Guantanamera over here in the older palette, and I'm going to brush that on the outer corner and sort of inwards over the purple, just to kind of deepen the purple and give a little shape to that. So the next diet is the 5-2. It is basically a diet where you eat the way you want within reason, meaning the diet does not encourage you to just eat and, go into the 3,000 or 4,000 calories a day kind of thing. They do want you to eat reasonably. But you eat for 5 days and you then fast for 2 days. And for them, fasting is like taking your calorie intake down to like 600 calories, I think. Yeah, 2 days with a calorie restriction of 500 to 600 calories. You do not put the 2 days together. You have, you could like decide to fast on Tuesday, and then you need 2 or 3 days in between. So your next fast would be either Friday or Saturday. And that's just, that makes common sense there. Fasting has been shown to be helpful in some ways for some things. Personally, I couldn't do a fasting diet. I like my food. I like my food way too much. I'm going to put this in my crease and go to my outer corner. And then we will use that darker blue here from the old Alamar palette. And we will use that to deepen the crease. So apparently this particular diet does have some benefits, including weight loss, if you can stick to it. Me, I couldn't. I like my food too much, as I just mentioned. Some people actually find the whole fasting thing very intolerable, so that is something to be aware of if you're going to try a diet like this, that you may find that this particular diet just doesn't, you just can't handle doing it. That like me, you like your food. Or, that it possibly exasperates other issues that you have, other health issues that you have. Or, when you're fasting, you may find that you have new issues. You may have never fainted in your life, but because you're doing this restrictive fasting thing, that all of a sudden you're having trouble with maintaining consciousness once in a while. It is, I've heard or I've read, because I actually don't know anybody on this diet, though I have seen a few people on Lose It encourage intermittent fasting, which is basically what this kind of diet is. They have said that it's something that you may need to get used to. So your first few times fasting may be harder on you if it's not something you've done before, but that it can get easier as you go along. I could see there's another way of doing it that's not fasting specifically, but basically where you eat more one day and less the next. You kind of stagger your calorie intake. And I can see that as long as the low end of your calorie intake isn't that low. I mean, 500 to 600 calories isn't even half of what a 120-pound woman in a coma needs. So to me, that is way too low, especially if you're an active person. Like I said, not a doctor. I'm just going by what I have learned with my research. And that just seems way, way too low. And so I would think that if you were going to do something like this, staggering and not necessarily fasting on your off days, let's say your normal calorie intake for your activity level is somewhere around, mine runs, because I'm building muscle, mine runs around between 25 and 27. But if I were losing weight, it would be closer to 21 to 25, somewhere in there, 21 to 23. So let's say I'm trying to lose weight, and I don't want to do the fasting, but I do want to stagger. So I would do 2,300 calories one day, and then 1,700 calories the next, 2,100 calories the next day after that, 1,500, 2,000, 23, 15, you know what I'm saying? So I would stagger it, but I would make sure that my minimum didn't go, say, less than 1,000 under what I should normally be eating, and definitely not below 1,200. So since my lowest is around 2,100, somewhere in there, it's actually probably a little higher, but somewhere in there, I wouldn't go below 1,200. So the lowest I would go is 1,200 calories for one day. And I would make sure that that low day is only one day a week, because the whole thing of depriving your body of the energy and nutrition it needs for one day, it bothers me. And like I said, I'm not a doctor, and it has had its successes, and people do swear by it. That's pretty. That's a pretty color. This is the color Veradero in the old palette, and it's beautiful. It deepened up that crease. It actually works very well with the blue from the Sarah Kay, in the sense that it deepens up, but when you go from the dark to the light, they actually kind of, it looks more like an ombre effect rather than two different colors. That's pretty. There's no research for the long-term side effects, but short-term appears to include difficulty sleeping, irritability, anxiety, dehydration, and daytime sleepiness. It also could negatively affect those with chronic conditions. Children, pregnant women, and people prone to eating disorders or have experienced side effects from them shouldn't be on this particular diet. So, and that all makes sense. Children need the calories to grow. You do not want them going to a deprivation diet. You really don't. You want to make sure that they have the calories they need to grow. Even if they seem to be getting a little on the heavy side, you want to make sure they have the calories to grow. So, and pregnant, if you're pregnant, your baby needs your baby needs those nutrients. When I was on Weight Watchers and I got pregnant, they would not let me stay dieting because you are building another human being inside your body. So you're going to need the extra nutrition. And while they do give you supplements are not necessarily the best way to get your nutrition. You know, I'm going to take the blue NB. I'm going to put this blue, as it falls over, I'm going to put this blue on the inner corner, and then I'm going to take that same blue that we used for our wing, and I'm going to put it on the outer edge. So next is the South Beach diet. And it was created by a cardiologist for overweight, diabetic, and pre-diabetic individuals. It is and he tried it himself before actually prescribing it to his patients. And it is another low-carb diet because carbs are the evil of this generation, I guess. However, to me, it sounds a bit more complicated because it's not just any carbs, essentially. He wanted you basically low glycemic. How is this? Low glycemic, yeah, index carbs, something like that. Yeah, now you know I'm not a doctor. Doctor would probably be able to pronounce that. So low glycemic, I think that's it. Low glycemic index carbs, lean protein, unsaturated fat, and you work in phases, with the first being the most restrictive, and it has approved and restricted foods. So this is another restrictive diet that's going to take you off certain foods. It's going to say certain things aren't allowed. The approved carbs are supposed to be on that low glycemic index. Supposedly, there are some issues with the diet's actual recommendations being somewhat inconsistent. I am going to try to clean up some of this fallout because there's a ton of it. And most of it is from that red color I used. So this diet, this South Beach diet, I mean, we all heard about the South Beach diet, and it is... A lot of people say that, you know, it's kind of obvious it was a South Beach sort of California type diet because of the amount of fish that it approves. You do have to be careful because there's some things, you know, you can get too much of certain things in certain fish, and that can be a problem. And I don't think this diet recognizes those issues. So it can result in weight loss without hunger, but it is overly restrictive, especially in the first phase. The first phase is apparently the most restrictive. It's sort of to get you a bump start. I do believe this is the diet that promises that you'll lose 13 pounds in the first 2 weeks. And to be honest with you, two things. One, probably a lot of that is water weight, because when we initially start losing weight, that's the first thing to go is water weight. Two, 13 pounds comes out to 6.5 pounds a week. That is double what is considered safe for weight loss. But it promises that so that people are encouraged and will keep going. And it can have some of the same issues as the other carb restrictive high protein diets that we've talked about if you're not careful. That said, of all the low carb diets covered, the South Beach is probably the most balanced and the safest, though it doesn't become a lifestyle. Yo-yoing, I'm going to use my CoverGirl Clean and start cleaning up my lines since we're going to be here. I've got one more diet after this. Yo-yoing is actually built into the diet, which is also concerning. Basically, you stay on the diet, going through the phases, and then, but at any time, if you start to regain the weight that you lost, especially after you've reached your goal, then you're supposed to go back to phase one. And so yo-yoing, which we know is hard on our bodies, hard on our metabolism, and not good for us for weight loss, is actually built into this diet. So for me, that makes this diet kind of a no-no anyway. And also, it's almost common sense in a way. If you start regaining weight because you've relaxed your diet, then you should already know that you can't relax your diet. And if you are also gaining weight because you relaxed your diet, you should also be aware that whatever diet it is you've been on isn't working for you, because obviously it is now it's not a lifestyle if you're slowly relaxing off of it. And part of the reason you can tell is because you're gaining weight back. So those are concerns. You don't want a yo-yo. We've discussed that several times. You don't want to be on a yo-yo diet. And this particular diet has that built in. I'm not sure at the time that this diet was created if they really understood the damage yo-yoing can do on a person. I do remember this diet being so popular for a while. We don't hear much about it anymore. And I do like the fact that it emphasizes, you know, fish and stuff like that. So there, again, as with the other diets we've discussed, there is no long-term research for long-term results. But it does have, if you're looking for ways to eat and not necessarily to be on this diet, it does have some good menu ideas, recipes, and cooking tips. But I think most of those you could find anyway if you just went looking for, you know, healthy diets. If you know what I mean. Just if you went and said, I want to do a fish dish tonight, you could do a recipe hunt or a menu hunt for a fish dish. I mean, it just seems to me it's buying the book would just be one extra thing to do. If you want to say healthier cooking, you can research healthier cooking. You don't need a book to do that. I've been using a different moisturizer that's supposed to reduce redness. I've only been using it at night, but it looks like the redness around my nose has gone down. It's working. Okay then. Gonna go ahead and just use my clean concealer. Apparently I don't need to remove any redness anymore, so I don't need my green. I can just hide the stuff. A little bit of stuff. And from the looks of my face, that's the only place I'm really having any trouble with right now. I got a couple of spots. They aren't really red. They're just slightly discolored. Interesting. Interesting. I'm going to keep using it and I'll let you guys know if it keeps toning things down. The only place I'm having a huge issue right now is with my under eyes. And it doesn't say anything about getting rid of, you know, that stuff. Unfortunately. Be nice. I'm looking into a new eye cream. I like my Cetaphil, but yeah, I'm looking into a new eye cream. I am definitely going to put more champagne. I think the yellow is being just a little too much. Anyway, the next diet is the Whole30. And I actually do have friends that I've seen on the Whole30. And I've seen them go on the Whole30. And I've seen them go back off the Whole30. The Whole30 was actually not intended to be an actual diet. It was actually designed for if you were having to find out if you have food sensitivities. Honestly, if you have food sensitivities, you can do that. Find out through a doctor, through testing. But the Whole30 is supposed to remove inflammatory foods and that would be foods with added sugars, alcohol, grains, dairy, etc. My biggest problem with this diet is that we're going to see if we can cover up some of these darker circles using this NYX dark circle concealer in medium, this little pot. I've used these before. I think my problem with them in the past is that they're just a touch stiff, but we will see if this one works. So my biggest problem with the Whole30 is it categorizes food as clean or not clean. Food isn't clean or not clean. Food is food. But it again is another way to have good food and bad food, essentially. A food is good if it's clean. It's not good if it's not clean. I mean, this is part of my problem with the so-called clean eating movement too. There's no definition of clean eating that fits across that board. So, you know, maybe that's one I'll have to discuss. I don't know, it'll be next week or the week after, because I'm supposed to do my monthly check-in soon. But anyway, so that's one of my problems with it, is that it does try to categorize food as essentially good or bad by declaring it clean or not clean. And that is supposed to help you determine whether or not you're going to, whether or not you should eat it. Just eat what you want to eat, guys. That's my feeling about it. But anyway, as long as it's not causing you any issues, you should be able to eat what you want to eat. And I do have friends who have claimed success on this diet, but then they get off the diet and go back. So it's another diet that's not really sustainable, and you're going back and forth. The diet is considered unsustainable because it restricts food, and it has the problem of not restricting sodium or cholesterol. So a lot of the foods you can eat are high in sodium and they're high in cholesterol, which are known to be bad for you. It's a non-diet designed to discover food sensitivities. The weight loss wasn't part of the original goal of this diet. All right, I think that's going to do it. We got our friend here today. Hi, Shadow. You guys, yeah, he's just getting himself settled back down. I am going to take my Vichy Mineral 89 because, as I have said before, I don't like my foundation just to sit on my face and do nothing. So we do 1 dot of that. So I'm going to do 3 pumps of my Maybelline Dream Satin Liquid. And then 1 pump of my CoverGirl TruBlend Matte Made. This one is just a little bit darker and more golden, just a touch. Put that in there. We're going to mix all of that together. The other issue with it is it restricts healthy foods, such as legumes, which is, you know, your beans and peas and things like that. It restricts dairy. And I know some people do have problems with dairy, but if you don't have a problem with dairy, you shouldn't have to restrict it. You know, you shouldn't have to give up your ice cream if you don't have a problem with dairy products. And it restricts grains. Again, I think this is sort of a fall into what became the gluten-free, because that's where you're going to get a lot of your gluten is from your grains. And some people just like bread and they don't have a problem with bread. And if you don't have a problem with bread, you don't have a problem with gluten, then you shouldn't have to restrict that thing. Now, to be fair to the diet, it does try to get you to restrict things that are not as good for you, including sugar and alcohol. But, I mean, those to me are kind of common sense restrictions if you're trying to lose weight. Those are things that you don't need a specific diet to tell you to reduce. That's part of, you know, everyday dieting. That's what most, even just the pyramids will tell you to restrict, or not restrict, but reduce the amount of sugar, reduce the amount of fats, keep your salt intake down, things like that. Doing something like that, to me, sounds a little healthier than something like this. It's not proven that inflammation is responsible for chronic illness. Some of the approved foods are no healthier than the foods they replace. Salty and fatty foods are on the approved list. You know, like, we all love bacon. Bacon is cool, but bacon is fatty and salty. The best sources for calcium and fiber are not approved. And the oil choices are inconsistent. So, extra virgin olive oil is okay, canola is restricted, and I think it's peanut or saffron oil are not good. And most oils are pretty similar. Benefits are primarily anecdotal, meaning they are not scientifically proven. They come from people who have been on the diet and said, this worked for me. And it doesn't necessarily say The science doesn't necessarily say, yes, this is how it should work. So in honesty, the whole 30, like I said, I have at least one friend that's on it. You guys have been crooked for some of this. I have at least one friend that's been on it, and I understand why she likes it. But at the same time, it's, again, one of those diets that would be pretty much common sense without it being a diet. I mean, if you have a food allergy, particularly a severe one, I would guess that you would know if you have an intolerance or a problem, or you would be able to find out very quickly. If you think something you're eating is causing issues with your digestion, your gastrointestinal tract, it's very easy to go to a doctor to find out if that's what's going on, rather than going through a diet for 30 days. And the friends that I have claimed its success. I have friends on keto who have claimed success and are like, well, it works for me. Well, but you're bouncing on and off of it. That means it's actually not working for you, because if you have to bounce off of it, then it's obviously something you cannot sustain. If you're having issues with your gastrointestinal tract, which is a word apparently I can't say, go see your doctor instead of playing around with an unproven diet to see what's going on, because it could be something else that's bothering your body, and you want to make sure to get the best care for your body and make sure that whatever you're doing is going to actually lead to whatever the problem is and fixing it. This has this diet has no research behind it. It makes unproven claims and restricts not only sensible foods like sugar, but the really healthy ones as well. So yeah, like I said, I have a friend or two that's on it, and I think they have someone who's helping coach them, which my understanding with this diet is actually a good thing to have as a coach. And it's just, if you're bouncing on and off, it doesn't really work for you as a diet. You have to stay, for a diet to be something that you can claim works for you, it has to be something that you can stay on and not bounce on and off of. So a lot of these diets I've been talking about have restrictions in them that people just find intolerable to what they like to eat or to their lifestyle. So the long and the short of it is, just remember, you don't need a formalized diet to have a plan or a diet plan to live and eat healthier, to have a healthier lifestyle. And you don't need to avoid gluten, sugar, inflammation, dairy, whatever the thing is that everyone's saying is causing issues with people's diets and why they're gaining weight. You don't need to avoid those things unless you actually have some sort of intolerance. If you are a celiac, you want to avoid gluten because it's painful. We have my oldest daughter has a friend who loves dairy products, but he shouldn't be eating them because they cause issues with his body. So unless you have something like that, you do not need to be gluten-free. You do not need to be, low carb, unless you're a diabetic and that's going to work for you. You do not need to be any of these things. You do not need to use any of these diets. You can use a pyramid plan. Basically, I like I think I've said in the past, I like the healthy weight pyramid, which is the older pyramid that has fruits and vegetables on the bottom. And then I think protein is next, and then I think grains, but I'm not sure. It might be the other way around. And we mix that with the Latin pyramid and the Mediterranean pyramid, and we try to eat as healthy as we can. We don't necessarily need to do that with a specific diet plan like Whole Food 30, South Beach, Atkins, whatever. We already know that you should be eating whole grain breads. We know you should, reduce the amount of white in your diet. So reduce sugar, reduce white potatoes, reduce white rice, and try to get more whole grain or multi-grain type products, multi-grain bread, whole wheat or multi-grain pastas if you can find them. Things of that nature. We already know you should be eating leaner meats and more fish, and we know you should be eating more fruits and vegetables. So with those in mind, you don't need to actually have a specific diet plan to lose weight or be healthier. If you want to lose weight, you just eat less. If you want to be healthier, you just improve the quality of your diet as much as you can. You don't need any of these to do that. And that's my other problem with them. They just try to meet a need that doesn't really need to be met. And while most of the diets we've discussed started off as a way to help with certain things, to help diabetics, to help people with gluten problems or whatever, while they started off that way, most of them have become money grabs and now are part of the major diet industry and diet culture. And to me, you don't need all that. You just don't need all that. If you need some kind of guidance, I can see that. But if you're going to do that, just grab a healthy cooking cookbook. You can get Mediterranean. There are dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of Mediterranean diet cookbooks. There are diabetic. If you're a diabetic, there are diabetic cookbooks. There are lots of resources out there that you can mix and match to find a diet that works for you, that isn't necessarily one of these diets, and that you can make sure that you're getting the minimum you need in nutrition. Anyway, finally gonna finish my face and then we'll be back. So here is our look for today. A bit more drama in the eyes than I was actually planning for, but I think it is very pretty. There you go. Used a solid color on the eyes. I'm learning a few things that are better to do for my eyes because I lose so much in the inner corner. It's better for me to go with a single color that I can easily repair and not have to worry about mixing colors. To get through and finish up and, final thoughts. As I mentioned before, you don't need some sort of official diet where you need to buy their books or their products, like the Atkins has all those products. South Beach, I believe, also has a lot of products that are on the market. And I think for me, when a diet gets to that point, when all of a sudden everything is being marketed and you can, buy paleo water or you can buy, Atkins meal bars or whatever. Sometimes when it gets to that point and they are basically gotten so far into our grocery stores that you could just buy nothing but their food almost. To me at that point, it's no longer about health, it's about money. And those are diets that I'm just not all that interested in following unless my doctor says I need one of them. I honestly believe that we all can do our own diets and we can find our own way through that path of health. If you want to lose weight, you can find your way through that path of wanting to lose weight without having to buy into the round robin, unhealthy, risking your health kind of components that these diets often have as a part of them, especially if they're low carb. I do understand some people have to be low carb. Some people have to be dairy free. If that's what you have to do, that is something that you have to keep in mind when you choose your food and your diet and whatever. But beyond that, I think all we really need is to realize you need more fruits and vegetables, go on the leaner side with meat, start trying to bring in whole grains. You don't need much to follow that. You can find different types of cookbooks from different authors that can help you with making menu plans and things like that without having to go on one of these fad / supposedly started for health type commercial diets. You can do your own diet. And I think honestly, if you just take a look at the pyramids and pick the pyramid you want to follow, I think you'd actually end up having a much healthier diet than any of these commercial diets would ever give you. that's just my 2 cents on it. Like I said, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a dietitian. However, a lot of what I've read is dietitians aren't even pretty happy with these diets in general. So it's up to you. Obviously, it's up to you. I can't come into your house and force you to do it my way. You have to find your own way. I just think that you need to know what the risks are before you get involved, and be careful of those if you decide to continue to follow that diet, and watch out for yo-yoing. If, like I've said repeatedly through these last couple of videos, if it's a diet that at some point you're not following it anymore and you start gaining weight and you're like, oh, okay, I got to get back on this diet, it's not the diet for you, because yo-yoing is worse than actually being on the diet. So, and if a diet has yo-yoing built into it, that's a red flag for me too. So that's just my take on it. You have to do what's right for your health, and that's what's important. Anyway, that's it for today. Perfect timing, although I'm supposed to film at least one more video, and my neighbors are now being loud again. Just my luck. I hope you like what you've seen, and that if you do, that you will subscribe. And if you do subscribe, don't forget to hit the notification bell so you know when I upload. I currently upload 4 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. And we have bonus videos coming. Hopefully quite a few of them coming in the future. They'll die down after, September, October, somewhere around there, depending on whether or not our weather is cooperative. If you're part of my notification squad, you want to check your bell and your subscription and make sure both are still active. If you don't subscribe, well, we would be disappointed. You are always welcome back, because we love having company here. So we'd love to see you again. And if we do see you again, don't forget to bring your cup of tea. It's been sitting here for a while. This video ran long, and then we had events when I was off. So this has gotten very, very cool. Oh goodness, it's actually started raining too. It's been an afternoon. Anyway, so I'm going to taste this. I suspect this is one of the teas that I actually liked cool, so it's not going to be a problem. But let's go ahead and give it a taste and see if it is. It's okay, cool. It's better as a hot tea. There's a bit of a bitterness in there now. Yeah, just a touch on the back end. And the mug definitely overwhelmed the flavor of it. Being so tall like this, the sachet actually is weaker than I think the first time I tried it, which was probably in a much smaller mug. I love big coffee mugs. What can I say? So it is a much weaker than it was in the past, I believe. It is a very mild tea, so that's not a really big deal. But definitely much better as a hot tea, and probably better one sachet in a little bit smaller mug. But still a good tea. Anyway, I hope you all have a good day.